What's up, gamers? So, yeah, this deck sucks. About a month or two ago, I made a tweet about Dragon Empire, the deck. It's basically just a Dragon Empire deck that plays a bunch of generics. As I was going through it, I went through the Virgula ride line, which is the new Koro, I think it's called. It's the new ride line from that. And I read the grade 2 order that goes with it and thought it could be pretty sick in premium. And the more I was building the deck, the more I realized you can bring just Dragon Empire to premium. So this is that. Our main grade 3 is Vergula. You can Energy Blast 3 and bind an opponent's rearguard and then call a grade 2 from your drop. You'll never be able to use this because you can't get energy in premium. The second effect is on swing, you CB1 and restand one of your grade 2 rearguards. This effect doesn't really come up that often, but the main reason we have this as our primary grade 3 boss unit is because of the order that goes with it. So the order does a lot of things. You can play it with Counterblast 1 and you need to have a Virgila Vanguard in order to use it. Whenever you do use it, you check the top 5 cards and then call a unit with the same grade or less than your Vanguard and call it. You give your Vanguard 2 different skills. The first one is whenever one of your rearguards is retired by the ability of an opponent's card, you search your deck for any normal unit and call it. And the other skill is that continuous on Vanguard. This unit gets plus 3k power for every normal unit on your rearguard and in your drop zone. So this card is actually really loaded because one, it replaces itself and is like a semi-tutor, which already makes it like a good order you could play. It also weirdly has like an anti-denial griffin part to it. So if the opponent does denial griffin any of your rearguards, then you can call another normal unit from your deck. It's a very weird skill to have, especially in standard where we haven't really seen that yet. There's like very niche scenarios where like the opponent can retire things during your turn. But the big thing is the power boost it gives. So you can have a really beefy Vanguard swing because of it. So the clan we're pairing this up with is Kagero with Dumjid Valor as our primary stride. So it has the blaze ability, so that means when one of your units attacks and you have more rearguards than your opponent, then your Vanguard becomes blazing for the turn. It also has whenever it's placed on Vanguard, you can Counterblast 1, flip up a G unit, retire an opponent's rearguard, and then it gets plus 15k power for every sentinel in your drop zone. And then it also has once per turn, whenever the opponent places a sentinel or a G guardian, then he restands with -1 drive. So this card has pretty good synergy with Dumjid Valor because Dumjid Valor is going to gain a ton of power by itself. It'll usually gain like 15 to 30k on the first time you stride it. If you play this order, you can give it a ton more power. So if there's like 10 normal units on your rearguard and in your drop, then it's an additional 30k power to Dumjid Valor. You can pretty easily get him to like 80k plus power by himself. So this is the whole premise this deck is built around, is behind this combo of cards. So the rest of the deck is trying to help fuel this as easily as possible. One of the primary issues with this is that we don't get any force markers from Virgula because it only just gives us Persona Ride and we don't have ways to get force markers through other means easily. So the main idea with the rest of the deck is to actually play it like an aggro deck with Dumjid Valor being our top end, trying to close out games easily. Kagero as a clan doesn't really have that great of aggro tools unless if you're playing specifically Overlord and you try to like slam them on turn 3. A lot of good aggro tools though that are available are in the Dragon Empire cards. So this deck is essentially just Dragon Empire with Dumjid Valor. Now, in order to make this deck function at a solid level, we are playing both the Dual Nation cards from Festival Collection for Dragon Empire. So whenever it's placed on rearguard from hand, not during battle phase, you can Soul Charge 1, he gets plus 5k power, and then you can Counterblast 1 and either call a grade 2 or less from your soul, or retire a grade 2 or higher from your opponent's rearguard. So we primarily use this to call something from soul, and we combo it off with Shenri. So Shenri, whenever it boosts, if your opponent has 1 or less rearguards, or you played an order this turn, then it gets plus 5k power, and then at the end of the battle, it goes into soul and you draw a card. So the combination of these two cards is actually very powerful early game, because if you go second, then you can call Shenri behind your Vanguard, boost with it, and then Shenri will go to soul and you draw, and then on your next turn, you call this grade 2, and then you call the Shenri back out, behind it, and then you swing for 28 on that column. So this is our big primary early game focus, is between these two cards, but we have other good options as well, with the Chinese Cabbage as our other grade 2. So it also has, when placed on rearguard from hand, not during battle phase, you get to call a plant token, and then you can counterblast 1 and do one of 2 skills. You can get the skill that all of your rearguards that were placed by a card effect this turn get plus 5k power, or if you have 4 more units in play, you can give plus 10k power to your Vanguard. So this is good because it just gives a ton of extra numbers for the deck, because it calls a plant token, so naturally you have a 15k column. But then also you can combo it with the other Dual Nation card, because that one can call something from your soul, and also your Stardust Blaze order also calls something from deck. So there's like a small potential of you being able to use that plus 5k power to everything called from an effect this turn. Most of the time though, you're going to be using the plus 10k power early game, and sometimes even late game, but most of the time you want to use it early game as a way to just generate a board easily and be able to make your Vanguard a very hard attack to block early. So these 3 cards is our primary aggro engine of the deck. And then to make sure we see our pieces very easily, we also are playing 4 Buy Attack Dragon, which is the ride fixer for the clan. So Buy Attack is good for multiple reasons in here. One, it can filter itself out into a different piece early game, which having a good early game is like very big for this deck. You can also find Stardust Blade off of it, because we kind of need it for the late game in order to try to secure wins, but it also can come up sometimes during the early game as a unit itself if you need a way to get Shenri procced, because we can't play our order till turn 3 onwards, and if the opponent tries to build a board themselves early game, then you can utilize Buy Attack Dragon to clear out a column and make it easier for Shenri to get its effect off. For the rest of the grade 1s, we're playing 4 Lava Flow Dragon. The only grade 3 we're playing in this deck is Virgula, so being able to secure that as consistently as possible is very big. You could play Hishat in this spot instead, but Lava Flow is more stable, and we don't really have the resources to use Hishat's first effect that often. And also getting the power boost from Lava Flow is really big on having an additional 13k booster. So Lava Flow generally is just a better option in this specific variant, since we're playing an aggressive style of game plan. We are also playing 2 of the new Order Searcher. So whenever it's placed on rearguard from hand, you can discard a card and then search your deck for any order and put it into the drop zone. And whenever you do play it, it goes to the bottom of the deck. So this essentially gives us 2 extra copies of our primary order. So now we basically have 6 in the deck. This is probably the most cuttable slot in the deck as well. So if you want to change something out for it, then that's completely fine as well. In the future, you could possibly, instead of play this, you could play the new grade 1 promo coming out. It counts as a heal that you could discard for G-Guard, and then could also become a really fatty shield itself. And then the last grade 1 kind of meshes it all together, because right now we have a really big counterblast issue through Cabbage and the other Dual Nation card from the Order, and then from Dumjid Valor. We have a lot of usage of our counterblast, and we want to make sure we have enough counterblast in order to securely close out a game. So the last grade 1 is Lizard Soldier Grom. Whenever it's placed on rearguard, you can Soul Blast 2 and Countercharge 2. So this card is really good in here. It actually just makes the deck function smoothly. Soul Blast 2 is not very hard for this deck, because we're able to use Shenri in order to go into Soul, but also really nothing else in this deck Soul Blast. So generally, Grom is gonna be able to be used at least twice throughout a game if you see them. The Countercharge 2 is really big because we want to keep using our rearguards and just keep spamming them non-stop and being able to keep up pressure that way. A lot of the time, since our grade 2s are on play effects, we want to intercept them off and then call new ones down on the next turn. And then Grom makes that game plan very viable. And then the last thing is, because it's Soul Blast 2, we can Soul Blast out 2 normal units, which also makes Stardust Blade give additional power that way. So all in all, Grom just makes this deck smooth like butter. And then for the trigger lineup, playing 4 of the grade 3 heal, because our only grade 3 is Vergula, and because we have Grom to consistently give us our counterblast back, we actually don't need the grade 0 heal that much. So the grade 3 heal is just a lot more stable and consistent for the deck. And also Lava Flow can tutor it as well if we're needing a Denial Griffin for specific matchups. For our over trigger, we are playing Eidos Faro. Jag Veda can be kinda awkward in here, because if we check it on our first Dumjid swing and the opponent perfect guarded that Dumjid swing, then we don't really do anything, because Dumjid will already be standing whenever it checks it. So Jagrada just like can sometimes just be a brick in that regard and just be a bad overtrigger to hit, because at that point it'll just be 100 million power, which Dumjid Valor doesn't need more power. Eidos Faro, on the other hand, is always going to be an additional crit, which is really big since we're trying to be super fast and aggressive with this deck. And you can sometimes add a different piece to your hand. So with our on-play effects that we are often trying to get rid of after we use them, we can add them back to hand in order to reuse again. We can add back Grom, which is really big. We can add back heals or other defensive triggers. We could add back Persona Ride. There's just a lot of different options we could add realistically every single game. That makes Eidos Faro pretty worth playing. The other option you could play is the new yellow overtrigger, where it blows up a board. Because we have buy attack as well, we're gonna be able to get some card draw off of it. And also, if the opponent utilizes G Guardians on Dumjid Valor swing, then we can just like blow up their guardians off of that and still hit through. Now, most of the time, G Guardians are gonna be on play effects, so they're still gonna be able to do all the shenanigans they're gonna do, but you can just randomly secure damage off of it, which can be pretty strong. And if you check it early game, then you can also just draw a bunch of cards. So overall, Lido T and Eidos Faro are like equal in strength in my opinion, and they're both viable options. And then the rest of the trigger lineup is critical triggers, because we just want to deal damage. We have enough ways to draw cards through Shenri and being able to recall Shenri multiple times, so we're not really in big need of having like draw triggers as well. And then also crit sentinels are generally good in aggro strategies. You can one card guard things pretty easily and then preserve the pieces in your hand for future turns. While if you had more 15k crits in here or perfect guards, then you'll generally have to guard with 2 or more cards more often than with crit sentinels. And that's basically it for the main deck. Really niche things in the G zone. Dumjid Valor is our primary way to win, but there are other cards that could be okay. If you know the opponent doesn't have a perfect guard in hand, you could go Barricot instead, and then Barricot will have a ton of extra power with an extra crit and an extra drive, and then you give your board a power boost also. And then since we're playing essentially 12 crit because of Eidos Faro, we have a pretty good chance of being able to just sack crits on them and be able to smack super hard on the opponent. There's Ziegenberg, which is just a confirmed restander as well, which can come up in certain situations outside of Dumjid Valor. And then the last niche stride that could close out a game is Novel Vog L Express. So doing its attack, the opponent can't guard with grade 1s or higher, and also if the opponent's at 5 or more damage, then their trigger effects are nullified. So Novel plus the order can be a really massive swing that the opponent can only perfect guard if they're running draw perfect guards, and it can also just stop defensive heals or over triggers. And yeah, here's the deck list. This deck is very fun. It's not competitive at all, but it is quite a different take on like how Kagero normally plays. Most Kagero builds don't have an early game, which this deck does have a really strong early game. And the deck is pretty smooth at what it does. It won't win all the time, but sometimes it will perform pretty well. And that's it. Let me know what you guys think about this deck down below. And if you try it, please let me know how it goes. Like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. And I'll see you guys in the next one.